Hey! Welcome to another video and another story. Glad to have you here. Today, we're jumping back into From Goblin to Goblin God. This is part 3 of the series, but before we get into it, let's quickly recap the last chapter. Stick with me, and let's dive right in. In the previous chapter, Lin Tian made his big escape from the cave. And surprise, surprise, he ran into a goblin girl, which shouldn't even exist. But what blew his mind even more were her stats. Because if a male goblin mates with her, he can become the goblin god. Obviously, Lin Tian couldn't pass up on that chance. So, as soon as the opportunity came up, he didn't hesitate to join her tribe. Just as you'd expect though, the goblins weren't exactly rolling out the welcome mat. In fact, they were pretty much ready to kill him on the spot because of the way he looked. But before things could get ugly, the chief showed up. And now, on to the next part. The goblin chief immediately demanded to know why Yue, the goblin girl, had brought an outsider back with her. Yue explained that Lin Tian had nowhere else to go, hoping the chief might show some empathy. But the chieftain, being the typical territorial brute, totally misread the situation. In his mind, he thought Yue had brought Lin Tian back as their next meal. So, without wasting any time, the chieftain gave the order for his men to attack, and you could just see their faces light up like it was time for a midnight snack. Now, a fight was definitely on the horizon. But Lin Tian, being quick on his feet, wasn't about to let that happen. Instead of gearing up for a battle, he pulled out his dagger. But not as a weapon. He used it as a bargaining chip. In a calm yet firm voice, he threw down the gauntlet and declared that he could make weapons. And if the goblins were smart, they'd let him join, because he could make them way stronger. The chieftain, intrigued, called off his men and stepped up to Lin Tian, giving him the once-over. Heck, he even sniffed him, trying to see if he could smell any BS. But to his surprise, Lin Tian seemed legit, and that got the chief's attention. He demanded to know exactly what kind of weapons Lin Tian could make. And at that moment, Lin Tian knew he was halfway to sealing the deal. So, with confidence, he bragged about his skills, telling the chief that as long as they could find some iron ore, he could forge any iron weapon they wanted. And given a little more time, he promised he could make even better weapons than what they were currently using. And guess what? It worked. The chief wasn't your average goblin. He could actually string full sentences together, which meant he was smart enough to listen to reason. Plus, judging by their reactions, the goblins were clearly impressed by the dagger Lin Tian showed them and the big promises he was making. And so Lin Tian seized the moment, emphasizing that with iron tools, they could take down any monsters or humans they came across. That little line? Yeah, it sealed the deal. Now, the goblins were totally convinced of Lin Tian's craftsmanship. Suddenly, the energy shifted. The goblins were buzzing with excitement about what was possible. With Lin Tian's skills, they wouldn't have to fear humans anymore, and they were even dreaming bigger. Some were fantasizing about capturing elves, convinced that with iron weapons in their arsenal, nothing could stop them from chasing those wild dreams. The energy in the air? Electric. The goblins were pumped about the idea of new weapons, and even the chieftain couldn't hide his excitement. But he knew better than to get ahead of himself. So, keeping his cool, he gave Lin Tian a stern warning. He told him he had 3 days to find iron ore and make iron tools. If they succeeded, Lin Tian's life would be spared. But if they failed, both he and Yue would be dead meat. After that, the goblins retreated to their tents. And Lin Tian? He was fuming inside, clenching his fists in frustration at how utterly foolish these goblins were. Even the old priest was cold-hearted, ready to kill his own kind without hesitation. But Lin Tian knew that confronting him head-on with his current strength was just not an option. He had no choice but to focus on making some iron tools, buying time and growing stronger. The next day arrived, and as night fell again, the search for iron ore continued. Lin Tian led the way with a few goblins ahead, while Yue trailed behind, watching every move. Yue wasn't used to this kind of strenuous activity, and pretty soon she was out of breath, totally exhausted. So, naturally, she pleaded for a few minutes to rest. Can you blame her? They've been walking all day long. But here's the thing. This girl really forgot she's dealing with goblins. Empathy? Understanding? Yeah, those don't come naturally to them. So instead of giving her a break like she asked, the goblins responded by stomping on her until she couldn't even stand up. And the worst part? They actually enjoyed it. To them, a girl goblin like her was just dead weight, not even worth their time or effort. In their eyes, she wasn't beautiful enough, not by their absurd standards. I mean, talk about irony, right? Even with her begging for mercy, they just kept on with their assault. But luckily, Lin Tian saw what was happening and stepped in. He was smart though. He didn't make it about protecting Yue, knowing that would only agitate the goblins even more. Instead, he reminded them they were out here to find iron ore, not fight. He had already told them what iron ore looked like, and fighting among themselves wasn't going to get them anywhere. If they wanted to stay alive, they had no choice but to find at least one piece of ore in the valley ahead. Otherwise, it was game over for all of them. Lin Tian, holding his iron dagger, quickly scared off the goblins. They ran off to do as they were told, but not without throwing some weak threats at him on their way out. They warned him to enjoy his time now because once they found that iron ore, the boss wouldn't spare him. But Lin Tian was just done with their nonsense at this point. These goblins were so dumb. Throwing threats like that, it was basically like giving him their playbook. Not that he needed it. I mean, it was obvious from the start. Even if he made the iron tools, getting killed by these idiots was only a matter of time. He already knew he had to get stronger if he wanted to survive. And the only way he could do that quickly? Through the female goblin, Yue. With her talent, if he mated with her, he could become the legendary goblin god. And luckily, Lin Tian's got that dog in him. Without wasting any time, he put his plan into motion. He saw Yue crying and went over to comfort her. Speaking gently, he told her that as long as she stayed by his side, he'd protect her. He promised to take care of her, give her food, a warm place to stay, and make sure no one dared to bully her ever again. And Lin Tian assured her that he would keep his word. But he was also real with her. Right now, they were way too weak to avoid being bullied by the other goblins. He needed her help to get stronger. His words seemed to both soothe and intrigue Yue, so she asked him how she could help. That's when Lin Tian revealed the plan. If she was willing to have children with him, he could become stronger. This made her blush even more. She had never done anything like that before. Seeing the look on her face, Lin Tian knew he had this in the bag. He leaned in for a kiss, and that kiss made her head spin. But the longer it went on, the more natural it started to feel for her. She let all her guards down, lying on the floor, all hot and flustered. With feverish eyes, she told Lin Tian she was willing to help him get stronger. And yeah, she was ready to have his babies. And well, my boy Lin Tian did not disappoint. But hey, let's keep it family-friendly here. We won't get into all the details. The important thing is, both of them enjoyed their time together, and with this, Lin Tian ended up having a total of 7 children with Goblin Yue. This boosted his level cap, and thanks to the talent limit, he gained 9 attack points, 100 health, and 10 defense. And get this, he even got a new title, God's Blessing and Potential God. His overall power shot up to 65, and not only did his level increase, but his form got an upgrade too. Yep, that's right. The more he clapped cheeks, the hotter he got. Talk about an OP skill, am I right? With this new power boost, his chances against the Goblin Priest were looking way better. But before jumping into any more fights, he couldn't let his baby mama catch a cold under the moonlight. So, like a real gentleman, he wrapped her up in his clothes, assuring her that he would protect her for life. That sweet gesture just made her even more attached to him. With their bond stronger than ever, Lin Tian was feeling super determined to take control of his destiny and lead his goblin clan to greatness. But of course, things couldn't stay peaceful for long. Suddenly, a scream for help echoed through the night. When they turned toward the source, they saw one of the goblins from their group running for his life, being chased down by a demon wolf. But that wasn't all. The goblins had actually found iron ore. Unfortunately, they brought back more than just good news. They also brought trouble. Lin Tian knew he had to deal with this demon wolf before they could celebrate. So, grabbing his blade, he told Yue to wait for him. And just as the wolf leaped at the goblin carrying the ore, Lin Tian swooped in and plunged his dagger into the wolf's neck, taking it out in one swift move. Even the goblin was left in shock at how fast Lin Tian handled the situation. And the craziest part? With just one strike, that massive wolf dropped dead. The goblin who witnessed it was in complete shock, realizing Lin Tian's skills might actually be even stronger than the chief's. So when Lin Tian asked for the ore, the goblin didn't hesitate to hand it over. As Lin Tian inspected the ore, a smile crept onto his face. It was high quality. Without missing a beat, he ordered the goblin to go find more, promising to make weapons for him once they had enough. And of course, the goblin ran off right away, eager to please. By the next day, smoke was rising from the woods. Lin Tian was showing off his ironcraft skills to the goblins, and they were blown away. They couldn't believe their eyes. Watching a goblin forge weapons like this was unheard of. The iron blade Lin Tian created wasn't just impressive, it was deadly. It could easily pierce the skull of a demon wolf, a beast the goblins had struggled with before. Even the chieftain, who had been skeptical at first, was left speechless by Lin Tian's abilities. It didn't take long for Lin Tian to earn the tribe's respect. His power and expertise made him a figure of admiration. And as word spread, the goblin who had been with him during the iron ore hunt couldn't stop boasting about how Lin Tian had saved them from the demon wolf, using nothing but an iron weapon he had made himself. The excitement in the tribe was palpable. They were starting to see Lin Tian as their key to strength and survival. With the excitement buzzing in the air, Lin Tian recognized the perfect moment to take charge. He raised the newly forged weapon high and asked the crowd if they wanted one too. As expected, every goblin's hand shot up in excitement, eagerly nodding in agreement. But not everyone was on board. One goblin, who seemed a bit sharper than the rest, stepped forward. He reminded everyone of their earlier agreement to spare Lin Tian's life. However, he added a catch. If Lin Tian wanted to truly join their tribe, he'd need to create 50 of these weapons in just 2 days. This was clearly an impossible task and his way of asserting dominance. But the goblin's plan backfired spectacularly. The others began to see Lin Tian in a different light, comparing him to a human who merely liked to give orders. As the murmurs grew louder, the chieftain clenched his teeth in frustration, realizing that Lin Tian was now earning more respect than he was. To his dismay, even some goblins were willing to help Lin Tian tackle the challenge of making those weapons. A smirk spread across Lin Tian's face as he reveled in his victory. He was clearly winning this battle of wits. His influence was expanding, and with each passing moment, the dream of becoming a goblin god felt increasingly achievable. Fast forward a couple of days, and it was night once again. Lin Tian had successfully completed the chieftain's challenge, and the entire tribe was in high spirits, ready to celebrate their newfound strength and unity. The goblins erupted in cheers, chanting Lin Tian's name as loudly as they could. The chieftain, though grinning from ear to ear, couldn't hide the rage flickering behind his eyes. He was seething, but didn't want to dampen the mood. So, he decided to play along, leading the tribe in a feast to celebrate Lin Tian's remarkable achievement. Cheers echoed through the forest, filling the air with a sense of victory. As the celebration continued, a boar was cooked to perfection, its aroma wafting through the camp. Yue, filled with enthusiasm, rushed over to Lin Tian, eager to present him with the biggest piece of meat, specially reserved for him as the guest of honor. Lin Tian accepted the meat gratefully and took a big bite. But as soon as he did, veins began to bulge on his forehead, and he collapsed to the ground, coughing violently as the poison coursed through his body. Yue watched in confusion and worry, unsure of what was happening to him. Her concern was quickly addressed when the chieftain swaggered over, towering above them with a smug grin. He laughed heartily, mocking Lin Tian for being so easily tricked. "How utterly stupid you are," he taunted, relishing the moment. "Your ego and ambitions blinded you, leading you to challenge the authority of the priest." But the chieftain wasn't satisfied with just poisoning Lin Tian. He had more sinister plans in mind, and the night was far from over. The atmosphere shifted as he plotted how to assert his dominance and remove Lin Tian as a threat once and for all. The chieftain had noticed the bond forming between Lin Tian and Yue, and with malicious glee, he declared that he would kill Yue with Lin Tian's own knife, relishing the thought of making him watch her suffer. But before he could act on his twisted plan, blood suddenly splattered across the field, not from Yue, but from the chieftain himself, as Lin Tian's dagger severed his dirty hands from his body in an instant. The chieftain was caught completely off guard, shock spreading across his face as he struggled to comprehend how Lin Tian had managed to recover from the poison. Lin Tian couldn't help but smirk at the sight of the chieftain's stupid expression. "That's what you get for underestimating me," he said, his voice dripping with amusement. He revealed that everything he had shown earlier was an act, and it was the chieftain's stupidity that had led him to believe otherwise. This deception was made possible thanks to Lin Tian's system, which had been preparing him for this moment. He knew the chieftain would try to poison him, but he had kept that part to himself. With the tables turned, the chieftain, in desperation, ripped off his chains and attempted a surprise attack from above. But Lin Tian had anticipated this move, effortlessly dodging out of the way and positioning himself perfectly to deliver a brutal backshot. The chieftain's head was cleanly separated from his body, and he fell to the ground lifelessly. With the immediate threat eliminated, Lin Tian turned his attention to the remaining goblins. They stood frozen in fear, realizing all too well that they were outmatched. However, Lin Tian had no intention of slaughtering them. Instead, he was there to build an army. Standing tall, he declared to the frightened goblins that, from now on, he was their boss. He would lead them to glory, setting their sights on attacking the humans and even the elves. His voice resonated with authority, and as the goblins listened, a sense of hope and excitement began to stir among them. With Lin Tian at the helm, they could envision a future filled with strength and power. Lin Tian stood before the goblins, ready to fulfill their wildest dreams. Under his leadership, they were going to work hard, but he made it clear they would mate even harder. "There's no cheek left unchecked," he declared, emphasizing their insatiable appetite for conquest. To the goblins, there was never enough meat to eat, and Lin Tian's fiery speech ignited a fervor among them. They roared with excitement, chanting his name and finally acknowledging him as their boss. Lin Tian understood the goblins well. Loyalty was earned, not given. To solidify their allegiance, he offered them the chieftain's corpse as their first feast together. The goblins, thrilled by the prospect of consuming the body of their fallen leader, wasted no time in devouring him. The previous chieftain's vast amount of mana made the meal even more desirable. As they feasted, Lin Tian couldn't help but smile, knowing that conquering the goblin tribe was just the first step in his grand scheme of revenge. Next on his agenda was using the elves to cultivate a stronger generation for his tribe. Meanwhile, lurking in the bushes, an elf watched the scene unfold with a worried expression. She couldn't comprehend the chaos before her. This was far beyond the typical goblin behavior she had encountered. Something dark and sinister was rising, and she knew that the balance of power in the land was about to shift dramatically. The feeling of dread settled deep within her as she contemplated what this meant for her people and the world at large. Thanks so much for sticking around until the end. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. We've got even more exciting stuff coming up, so make sure you don't miss out on the next one. Until then, take care and I'll catch you in the next episode. For now, bye.